said live. Is it always live? No.
And we're now live.
Fantastic. So we're now live. Welcome, members of the public, to this meeting, and thank you for your patience. This is Democracy in Action. Sometimes there's a little bit of slow action, but we can start this evening's meeting. My name is Councillor Penny Rivers, and I'm the chair of this committee and will be chairing this evening. Members and officers, please raise your hand to indicate whether you wish to speak. Please keep your microphones on mute when you are not speaking. Please, can you keep your questions brief and to the point? And I'd like to remind ward councillors to sit separately from the committee while applications in their ward are being considered and voted on by this committee. And also, to vote, you must be in this room and to be seen to attend to every word of every speech and every presentation. So apologies for absence, number one on the agenda. Are there any?
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have apologies from Councillors Terry Weldon and Councillor Julian Spence.
Thank you. And declarations of interest, are there any?
None received, Chair.
Thank you. There are no questions submitted by members of the public, and there are no questions submitted by members. So we move to agenda item number 5, which is relevant updates to government guidance or legislation since the last meeting. Claire.
There's been no updates since last Tuesday. Thank you.
Thank you. So now we come to our applications, the ones that are subject to public speaking. And the first one is WA 2024-00921, which is for land at Windfield, Hascombe Road, Godalming. This application has been called in by Councillor Atkins. Members, when a councillor does call in an application, it is good practice to be here present and to speak. Dana, over to you.
Good evening, Madam Chair. So the first application this evening is WA 2024-00921, Winfield, Hascombe Road, Godalming. And I've got a an update sheet. Amendments to paragraph 6, representations and officers' comments. The word trees omitted from the comments. There are no lights within the trees. Lighting is fixed to the ground and facing the trees and bushes. And informative, a certificate of lawful development should be applied to confirm whether external lighting is lawful. This is also to be omitted. The applicant does not wish to submit an application, and the applicant maintains that the lighting is not development and has been installed for over 4 years. Now moving on to the presentation. The first slide is the site location plan with the site outlined in red and or other land owned or controlled by the applicant in blue. The second slide is the block plan, and you can see the decking in question here where I'm moving my cursor. And the next plan is the block plan, a detailed plan of the decking. So the decking measures 25 meters in length and 11 meters in width. It is seated within the ground of the application site and is not visible from neighbouring gardens or the immediate street scene. Planning permission is required. as the initial height of the decking was up to 1 meter above ground level, and it is an engineering operation requiring permission within Section 55 of the Town and Country Planning Act. The garden levels have been raised as part of a landscaping scheme, with the resulting height of the decking no more than 330 millimeters above the ground levels. 30 centimeters. The decking is stepped down from the west to the east, and it's seated well within the grounds of the application site. Following are some photographs of the decking as seen from various points within the land. Again, the decking and the steps leading to the decking. And there are 3 types of lights within the decking: down lights, pedestal lights, and step indicators. These are the down lights here on this parapet. So there are 4 on the parapet and 1 each side of this outbuilding. The pedestal lights are also down-facing lights, so the light is under the top of the light facing down. They are Lancate LED lamps, 12 watts and 650 lumens. So I could say the downlight ones are 600 GR10 6 watts bulb with 500 lumens. And the third type of lighting are the step indicators, and they are installed within the decking on each side of the steps. They are Collingwood GL200 lights with a 5.7 watts bulb and 40 lumens. There are other lights within the grounds. There are external security lights. They do not form part of the application site. You can see them on this, and that's a better picture of them. So you can see these are some other lights within the grounds, but they do not form part of this application. The decking is well within the grounds of the application site, and you can see it's not visible from within the street scene. And the main matters for consideration are the impact on greenbelt, design and impact on visual amenity, Surrey Hills National Landscape, former AONB, and the dark skies, and the impact on residential amenity. The recommendation is for approval subject to conditions. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Dana. There are 4 speakers here, the first of which is Mr. Austin Brown. You have 4 minutes from when you start speaking from down here.
Can you hear me? Perfect. Okay, I would like to start by informing you that the retrospective application for this deck is part of a wider picture of planning contraventions on this site and forms part of an artificial landscaping scheme that stretches right across the 14 acres of Windfold. This property developer, who doesn't even live there, has built at will with no repercussions or control. This deck would never have been given permission had he applied prior to building. Clearly, this deck conflicts with statutory objectives in LURA, which introduce stronger legal requirements for planning authorities to preserve and enhance the AONB. This is effectively urbanisation of the Surrey Hills National Landscape, which runs contrary to all the objectives in the legislation designed to protect the Greenbelt and the AONB. The lights are not compliant with dark skies initiatives in Surrey Hills Management Plan. There are no special considerations here, merely a property developer who wants his own way. The planning officer makes much in her report about the lights associated with the deck not causing the light pollution. This deck may not be the sole cause of artificial lighting, but it certainly adds to it. Unfortunately, it only takes a small amount of night lighting to cause a tree to be seen for miles around. As is evidenced by the 14 neighbour objections to this application, the beauty of the dark skies in the Surrey Hills are important to most people who live in this area. yet the needs of one person are being put ahead of the rest of the community. The lights form a halo over the hill and can be seen all the way from the village and beyond. So claims made by the planning officer that the deck is not visible from outside of the dwelling and that the proposal would not have an overbearing impact on the neighbouring dwelling is simply not true. And we've got more photos as evidence. The damage of this landscaping on local wildlife is also noticeable. The biodiversity checklist has been filled out incorrectly and has therefore not triggered the need for an ecological survey. This was pointed out by Hascombe Parish in their objection and also in our own comments. But we've had to undertake bat surveys for our own extension, and foraging bats were observed all over the area. Our ecologist informed us that the light coming from the deck would be enough to cause a great deal of harm to bats and other night foraging mammals, disrupting feeding, roosting, and mating patterns. Indeed, in his own objection to our extension, Mr. Burnell expressed a great deal of concern about the bats in the area. Ms. Alabisi's report talks about a separate investigation which was initiated by the council in October 2023. Sadly, enforcement officers were told to stop proceedings after Mr. Burnell met with the chief executive and head of planning. We do not understand why the council would not follow this line of inquiry, as the sheer quantity of light should require permission, as was necessary at Hascombe Court. We were surprised to read in the report that no specific conditions have been placed on the lights. In an email yesterday, Ms. Alabisi said that putting a site-wide condition on the lights would have breached 2 of the 6 conditions outlined in paragraph 55 of the MPPF. We wholly disagree with this statement and have been informed that site-wide conditions should have been placed on the property in the original planning application prior to the new build only a few years ago. There is no reason why strict conditions should not now be put on this particular area, which, as you have all seen from the photos, and I have many more here to distribute, contribute heavily to the lighting on our boundary. We are concerned that if the council permits this development, a precedent will be set that they are unable to go back on. The deck is 250 meters squared. What if we built the same right on next to Mr. Burnell's? Presumably the council would have no recourse. And what if our neighbours did the same, and their neighbours, and theirs? This build first, ask later attitude by the mega rich is becoming commonplace in this locality. And we appeal to you to stand up and do something. There really is no difference between what Mr. Burnell has done at Wimfold and what is happening down at Stoveolds Hill. Nobody should be above the law. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Austin Brown. Our next speaker is Andrew Bandos. Ms. Bandos, you too have 4 minutes to speak from when you start.
Can I hand these photos round? Is that all right? I'll just need them.
Pass them.
No, I'm sorry, Chair, we don't allow her photos to be sent round.
Thank you. Mr. Bandos, you have 4 minutes to speak from when you start.
Good evening, members. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak at this committee on behalf of my client, the owner and occupier of Wimfold Hascombe Road. This is his home and his only home, and he lives there, albeit he does travel abroad quite a lot. Wimfold is a large detached dwelling sited within generous landscape grounds of some 0.8 of a hectare. The property and grounds are well screened from public views and also screened from surrounding residential properties. The officer report states that the nearest properties to the decking area are some 85 metres away, behind extensive landscape screening. We concur with the officer report and its assessment of the proposal and conclusions that the proposed domestic decking area and associated low-level lighting are modest features and do not cause any material harm to the amenities of neighbouring properties or the overall character of the area. The decking is low enough and screened to ensure there is no overlooking of neighbouring properties when the decking is in use. As stated in the officer's report, the planning application relates solely to the decking and lighting that is shown on the submitted planning application plans. We note that there have been extensive representations made by objectors concerning lighting beyond the decking area. but this lighting in the garden of the house is permitted development and does not require planning permission, which my client has had confirmed in writing by the head of planning. We are not aware of any outstanding enforcement action concerning this matter. Objectors have made a complaint to Council's Environmental Health Department concerning garden lighting. The Council's Environmental Health Officer visited the site and confirmed that the case has been closed and there was no statutory nuisance being caused. Turning to the application itself, the proposed decking area is domestic in scale and appearance. Whilst the decking measures 25 metres in length and 11 metres in width, it does have a stepped levels that follow the adjacent garden levels, so that the decking only rises some 30 centimetres in height above the existing garden level for most of its length, although to the eastern end of the decking, there are steps that lead down to the second studio outbuilding, which results in the proposal exceeding the permitted development height of 30 centimetres and therefore the proposal required planning permission. The decking has a number of small light fittings installed. These are sited around the decking steps and give low-level lighting, ensuring that the steps are safe to walk on in the evenings. There are also some lanterns on the edges of the decking area. These give low-level ambient lighting. Additionally, there are small downlights fixed to the wooden panel adjacent to the decking area at a height of 1.8 metres. These point down and illuminate the barbecue area. Similar downlights are also found on the lower decking area on either side of the studio outbuilding. All the lighting on the decking area has a low luminance and very low watt bulbs fitted, as set out in the officer report and shown on the application plans. In summary, the lights either point downwards, sit within lanterns, or the decking illuminate the steps. We note that the expert in landscape, Surrey County AONB officer, states that he does not consider the proposed lighting associated with the decking to be a problem. In terms of Greenbelt, we note the case officer states that the proposed decking is an engineering operation, which is not inappropriate development within the Greenbelt. In light of the proposal's acceptability in terms of Greenbelt, AONB policy, together with a modest scale and appearance and associated low-level lighting, we consider that the proposal has no material impact on the amenities of neighbouring properties or the overall character of the area. We trust members will support the application as recommended by officers. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Bandos. Our next speaker is Keith Thompson. I believe you're on screen, Mr. Thompson.
I am indeed, if you can see me.
Yes, loud and clear, very loud. You two have 4 minutes from when you start speaking.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. My name is Keith Thompson. I am a parish councillor for Munstead and Chewsley Parish Council. I'll start by just giving you a timeline in terms of the contact that we've had with both Mr. Burnell and also Mr. and Mrs. Austin Brown. Mr. Burnell of Winfold, Hascombe Road, and Mr. and Mrs. Austin Brown, also of Hascombe Road at Orchard House. Mr. Burnell attended our parish council meeting on the 21st of November 23, following a previous application in relation to the decking, and raised some concerns to our council. Subsequently, we agreed as a council to visit the Winfold property, which we did so. In fact, our chair and myself and 2 other councillors attended the site. So thank you to Mr. Burnell for offering that opportunity. We were given a chance to view the decking area, subject of this retrospective planning application. We were also kindly invited by Mr. and Mrs. Austin Brown to view the same location from their property, Orchard House. Key observations I'd like to make, for this meeting was that there are additional buildings, as you've heard in the previous report, studios immediately surrounding the decking area that also would appear to quite naturally emit light when in use. I appreciate that this application is for the decking area only. I believe does not cover those studio areas, but one of the key highlights, and also as communicated by Mr. and Mrs. Austin Brown, is that the total cumulative effect of lighting from Winfold, from the decking, from these additional external buildings, from tree uplighting in various areas, in totality was a significant concern to them as neighbours and owners of Orchard House. As I've mentioned, we did view from Orchard House, from their garden. We got to close proximity from their side to the decking area, so we could see the screening that was in place. We did not specifically view the lighting in use. This was an early evening, viewing of the area. And again, to be clear, we've been very supportive of both parties, Mr. Bennell and Mrs. Austin Brown, with regards to both of their opinions with regards to this application. But there would appear to be an ongoing significant concern for Mr. and Mrs. Austin Brown with regards to, again, the cumulative lighting impact when the decking area and surrounding buildings are in use. Let me just check my notes, if I may, in terms of additional points. Just 1 second. Okay, I think that's everything that I needed to cover for this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Thompson. Now we come to the Ward Councillor, Councillor Austin, to speak. You too have 4 minutes.
Thank you. Firstly, just to clarify the reason, what the chair raised, the reason Councillor Atkins, who raised this and brought this to committee, is not here, is because she was asked not to be. I don't know the details of why, but I have covering for her for that. So it is not a slight against Councillor Atkins for not being here. She was asked not to be, possibly by Claire Upton Brown. I don't know. Right, moving on. So
I can just correct that. That is not the case. So
So
I don't
that-
know why she's
she
not here.
well, we need to get to the
But
bottom of
no,
who did then.
Yep.
Okay.
Use your 4 minutes. on
Thank
the
you.
subject. Thank you.
The application has come about as part of an enforcement issue over the whole site regarding contravention of dark skies policy over the AONB. I checked with the enforcement officer yesterday, and the enforcement case is currently on hold, not dead, as previously stated. So this is about dark skies. The Surrey Hills AONB states, we want to champion and protect the fragile oases of natural darkness still to be found within the county and do all we can to reduce the damage done county-wide by light pollution. Because badly designed lighting wastes energy, it travels far from its source, it disrupts wildlife and impacts wider ecology and diversity. It impacts human health and it light washes the sky, depriving other people of the ability to see the night sky. So that is from the Surrey Hills AONB. That's why it's important we support our AONB dark skies policy, and it means that those who have chosen to live in the AONB, we think should do too. But this is the really frustrating thing. Where are the tools with which we as planning committee can do this? Hascombe, being a small parish council, has no neighbourhood plan and therefore no written evidence of a dark skies policy. Munstead and Chiesley are the same. But they both state they are supportive of dark skies policy and have made this clear in their objections. I question if installing this deck with its associated lighting, plus the separate case of the enforcement case of potentially of the numerous uplights across the site, is respecting the AONB dark skies policy. From the evidence I have seen, I'm not sure it is. There is a difference of opinion between the case officer and the main objectors as to whether the lighting on the decking is sufficiently contributing to be in contravention of dark skies. I do question, did the officers attend at night time to see the full impact of the lights and as part of a bigger scheme? As ward councillors, we suggest that a condition restricting additional lighting and restricting additional luminosity on the decking would be sensible given what's happening across the rest of the site. While the report states the decking lights are not the main issue, the neighbours strongly feel they are a major contributor and in their immediate eye line. Therefore, I would ask the committee to give great thought to a condition as above for the sake of neighbours. Thank you.
Thank you. So, members, the debate is now open. Councillor Rubini.
Thank you, Chair. On page 10, number 5, the consultation with the AONB officer, it says towards the end that these works were carried out under permitted development and is advised to submit the relevant application to confirm permitted development. Has that application actually come in?
So this is relating to something that isn't before you this evening, and I would advise the committee that they actually discuss the application before them, not the other matter of lighting within the site. So you have been advised that there isn't a certificate for the other lighting that is subject to an investigation within the enforcement team. But what you have before you this evening is a planning application for decking and the lighting that Dana's just described to you. And if it's helpful, Dana can put back up a slide so that everybody's clear what lighting you're being asked to make a decision on this evening. And there's no sort of confusion within the committee, given that we've talked about two different lots of lighting this evening. So Dana, if it is helpful, see if you've got a slide that will just help to clarify what lighting you're being asked to make a decision on this evening.
So there's 3 types of lighting within the decking. These down lights here, so there are 4 on this parapet and 1 each side of the studio. There are these pedestal lighting, which are in the corners of the patio. I can show you actually on the plan. The little squares, I don't know how big you can see them. So there's 1 here, 1 here. So each part of the decking has 1 in its corner, if you want. So again, they're also.
So if we just keep that slide up.
Yep.
So members, if we just keep that slide up for you, which will help you to just be certain what lighting we're talking about, if that's helpful.
So all the 3 type of lights are on the right-hand side here. Thank you.
Councillor Keane.
Thank you, Chairman. Can we just be sure that this is low wattage lighting? I mean, you know, from what we're hearing, the lights are very bright and everything, but I think Dana said these were low wattage lights. Can we just confirm that is fact?
Yes, I will go to the slide which shows each type of light. So these are the down lights ones. There are 6 watts, 500 lumens. Then we've got the pedestal ones, which are 12 watts, 653 lumens. And then we've got the step indicator lights, which are 5.7 watts, 440 lumens.
Thank you. Councillor Coburn is next, and then Councillor White.
Thank you. I've got several reservations. I put my cards on the table. I hate decking and I'm not very keen on lighting up gardens at night, but I will leave that to one side because that's just my personal opinion. But I do know that lights, even lights that are meant to be low, whatever it is, wattage, light up the dark sky incredibly. I mean, they just glow, and there's nothing you can do about it. And if it's on a decking, it's reflective as well. I suffer from this with the neighbours nearby who light up their garden every night like fairyland. And I'm sure every single bulb that they use is very low wattage, but it's cumulatively, the effect is just one constant shine. What it's doing to wildlife, I have no idea. But it means that I have to shut my curtains in my spare bedroom if the person who wants to sleep there wants to get any sleep. You know, it is a very tricky thing, low-level lighting at night, because, as I say, the darker the night, the more it seems to glow. What worries me more about this, because I think we can do something about the lighting, we refused a certificate of lawfulness for some decking. Now, I'm no expert on decking. I don't like it. But why is this acceptable, and why was that previous decking? I'm sorry, I have looked in the report and I don't fully understand what is acceptable about this in an area of outstanding natural beauty in the green belt when the other one was refused. Thank you.
So members, just to help clarify that, a certificate of lawfulness under section 191 is whether or not the decking requires planning permission. And I think Dana, in her presentation and set out in the report, has explained why this decking does require planning permission and therefore the planning application. So the certificate is just a technical piece, does it or doesn't require permission. And whilst it's described as refused, I mean, technically, we were saying the decking does require planning permission.
Could I just come back, Chairman, because not all decking requires planning permission, does it? So is this large? Is it where it is? I mean, why does this decking require planning permission, please?
So as we've set out in the report, it's the height of the decking, which is, and chip in, Dana, if I've got this wrong, it's 300 millimetre above ground level.
Yes, it was higher than that. That's why it needs planning permission rather than comply with the certificate. But since then, there's been landscaping works that raised the levels around the decking. So at the moment, they are 330 centimeters higher, no more. Like, for example, you can see. So that's the height of the decking at the moment. But prior to this landscaping works, it was higher than that.
I'm sorry, could I just come back one more time?
Yes.
I'm maybe it's the lights of my neighbours, but I feel I'm living in a sort of prairie land here. So the decking is too high, so you fill in underneath and it makes the decking acceptable. I just don't understand.
Just to be clear what we're advising, if the decking was level with the grass, it would not require planning permission. Because it's 30 centimetres above ground level, it requires planning permission. That's what the GDPO sets out as those requirements. So this decking requires planning permission. The certificate was the question to the council, does this or doesn't this require permission? And we said it did require permission, and therefore we've got the planning application. Now, the actual height is shown, so that's existing ground level as is, and therefore the assessment view this evening is, the picture before you, is this decking acceptable development within the curtilage of a dwelling house, or is it causing some form of harm in terms of impact on amenity, etc. So that's, I think, the simplest way I can explain why we have a planning application. That decking requires planning permission because it exceeds the permitted development allowance for decking.
Thank you, Claire. Councillor White.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Sorry, before I get to my main point, that's got my mind racing and thinking about the logic of here. Am I understanding correctly that if the decking exceeds 10 square metres, then there has to be a planning application? Is that what we're saying?
So, members, we can spend quite a long time debating the content of the GDPO, but I think for members, what you need to just consider this evening is the size of this decking is such that it requires planning permission, because you can't change or debate what is in the planning legislations that triggers the need. The size of this decking requires planning permission, and therefore we've got a planning application, a retrospective application, because the decking is already there.
Thank you. Thank you, Claire. This is like jury service, because you're not allowed to know what's happened before and you can't comment on it, and you've got to concentrate on what's in front of you. I'm in quite a difficult position because this is what I do. This is my career, or was my career when I retire. So I know about this backwards and forwards and inside out, and dark skies are a problem. But dark skies, it's also a win-win because you can prevent it. You don't have to use lighting, which creates problems at a dark sky. You need to put a top hat on it. If you put a top hat on it, the light can't go up, and you keep everything below 70 degrees, which is the requirement. It's not a problem. My feel on this is, provided the planning officer and the various consultees are sufficiently convinced that the decking does not contravene the requirement, then personally I'm fine with that. Where I have got a problem is obviously on the contribution to the dark skies. Now, we've got a situation here where there is obviously a major contribution to dark skies from another situation, which is on the same property, which we're not able to comment on tonight. So I think the view that I would take is until that is resolved, and there needs to be a proper lighting expert come in and do a survey and assess the problem. Until that's resolved, I think the lights should be switched off on the decking because one way or the other, they are contributing, albeit they're facing down, but the reflectance of the decking will be going back up to the dark sky and will be contributing. So my view would be that that condition, the lighting should be switched off until such time that the other lighting issues are dealt with, because lighting in the trees sounds pretty bad to me.
Thank you. Councillor Steiger and then Councillor Rubini again.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to check on the biodiversity checklist. The Parish Council seems to say that this was incorrectly filled out and therefore no ecological survey was required. I just wanted to check if that is in fact the case. Thank you.
So members, the ecological surveys are obviously submitted, but planning officers then actually assess whether or not an ecological survey is required, regardless of the way the checklist is filled out. And there will be a number of different triggers that might lead for the planning officer to request an ecological survey from the applicant, regardless of the biodiversity checklist. There were no triggers in this application that led the case officer to the conclusion that a ecological survey was required, and therefore no survey was requested.
Thank you. Councillor Rubini.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Problem with this is from all sides about the lighting that they plan to put in. Is there a way that we could put a condition, if it's helpful, to actually say when it can come on and off, i.e. it could be controlled by passive infrared, for example, so if somebody uses that decking, the lighting would come on, but not at other times unless an animal went across. Or perhaps we could put a condition for timing, i.e. perhaps it could come on at, I don't know, 2 o'clock till 10 o'clock. Is there something that we could devise that would help so that we don't get this pollution most of the time, but only when it's in use?
Thank you, Claire.
So members, were you minded to support the application? You may feel that it's necessary to put a condition on restricting the lighting so that maybe it goes off at, I don't know, whatever the members think, but say 11 o'clock and, was off between 11 and 6 a.m., whatever, so that it isn't on overnight. So, that is open to the committee to put a hours of use condition on the lighting to make the development acceptable in your minds if you're concerned about that lighting being on overnight.
Councillor Beeman.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. Lighting apart, at the end of the day, this is retrospective application, which is not something I'm generally in favour of. Really, because it depends. When was the certificate of lawfulness actually lodged as to whether they wanted, was that after they constructed this decking or not?
Councillor Beeman, would you be so kind as to say that again, please?
Yeah, I said, I don't support retrospective applications, but I'm interested to know whether the certificate of lawfulness was submitted after they had already constructed the decking or not.
Yes, the certificate was put in to establish whether the decking that had been put in required planning permission.
you.
Councillor Keane.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, I'm minded to support Councillor Rubini's suggestion that there could be a time limit on the lighting. I see this as possibly the only way that we probably would get round or come to a decision on this. I mean, it wouldn't come on until later in the evening, certainly in the winter. I don't know who would want to go on decking in the winter, but still. But I would think possibly say at dark and then go off at 11. I would like to suggest that that's maybe a way forward as well.
Thank you. As we're discussing the decking and the lighting to the decking only, that condition would apply to the lighting on the decking only. Yeah. Councillor Coburn.
I agree with some restriction if we do give permission, but I just wondered if we could go back to Councillor White's suggestion that, you know, that there should be no lighting allowed until we've sorted out the whole lighting in the garden, because I mean it's the cumulative effect, isn't it? So we've got the two suggestions. One is putting a limit on it, which is going to be very difficult, you know, simply because of different areas, different times, different uses. But, you know, if it was something we could control until the whole of it's been sorted, I would have thought that was a, you know, a very useful thing to do if it's remotely possible.
I know that I was away for the last planning meeting and that application was deferred. I wouldn't want us to get a reputation for deferring applications.
Sorry, Madam Chairman, I did not ask for a deferral.
Thank you.
Maybe if I can respond. I think the difficulty you'd have, members, is how you'd actually frame a condition, because it may be that the lighting that's there at the moment that isn't the subject of planning application either doesn't require planning permission or is removed entirely. So I don't think that you could frame a condition where you've got unknowns within the wording of that condition. I just don't think that meets the tests of reasonableness, etc., etc.
Councillor Sullivan.
Sorry if this is a stupid question. Could you, so you couldn't have something where the deck is allowed to remain, but the lighting on the deck is removed?
No, members, you've got before you an application for the lighting and the deck. So you either, well, you've got three options. You either approve it as is, four options: approve it with a further condition, refuse it, or you could defer it to get the applicant to remove the lighting from the application. But I just don't think that's a reasonable approach for a committee to start redesigning, which would be a redesign of the scheme in that way.
Councillor Keane.
The way I'm seeing this is that quite possibly the lighting on the decking it's obviously not the problem, or it won't be the problem. It's the other lighting that we're not allowed to discuss. And I can see the reasoning of Councillor White saying that, and you know, until that lighting has been looked at, it's very difficult to know what the light pollution is. You know, we're in a very difficult position here, because if we approve this and the other lighting remains, then you have added pollution. So it is very difficult for us, Madam Chairman.
Members, whilst the enforcement case remains open, I'm struggling to conclude that the other lighting requires permission. It's lighting that's fixed to the ground, low level lighting. I can't see in the GDPR how that requires permission. So members, you know, as you know, permitted development rights are quite extensive. They've been extended significantly over the last few years to enable people to carry out quite extensive developments within their homes and their gardens without the need for planning permission. So whilst, you know, there might be views about whether those things that can happen without planning permission as acceptable or unacceptable. You know, our view at this point is that those other lights do not require planning permission. Obviously, given that this has come through as an enforcement complaint, we have encouraged that certificate of lawfulness so that there's an actual formal decision on this, given that you've got clearly quite a lot of strong feelings within the community on this matter. But our view, you know, at this time is those other lights that aren't before you this evening do not in themselves require planning permission.
Councillor White.
Thank you, Chair. Could I just ask Head of Planning, because this is really a very difficult, it really is difficult, this one. The logic of what has just been said is that if you have permitted development rights, you can stick a torch straight up into the air and light the whole area with it. There's no control. There has to be control of dark skies. Now, if permitted development means that you can install whatever you like, and when you switch it on, somebody drops you in to the ANOB authority, because they have a zero light policy. If you're in AONB, it's a zero light policy. So there must be some intervention there through permitted development that by an authority, and I don't know which authority it is, but there must be some authority that can comment on that and say, no, this contravenes the dark sky policy and needs to be corrected, irrespective of permitted development. I know that's not what we're talking about tonight, but I think it's a point.
So, members, just in terms of policy, AONB, there is a policy on dark skies within, which is in local plans, and dark skies is part of any AONB. Sorry, I'm struggling to think of the word for the policy document, but they're the policy document for their area. It isn't an enforceable, it isn't a binary. If there is a light in the AONB, then someone can go and do something. It's a policy that's then a judgment as to the impact of lighting on dark skies. And that is assessed through the planning system. And you know, I'll give you sort of an example. You may have an extension with Velux window roof lights, not Velux windows, sorry, roof lights. And you may say, well, there will be light spillage in the evenings because people put the lights on, and you may decide that that could be mitigated by blackout blinds, for example. So it's a policy. You make a judgment, as you do with your policies in your local plan. You make judgments as whether or not what's being proposed is harmful to the dark skies, not that a light will be so difficult that it would undermine the policy objective of dark skies. So it's a judgment as to whether or not these lights will cause so much light spillage as to impact on the dark skies policy, in the same way as you might, you know, make that judgment round a policy relating to amenity value, you know, policy in the local plan. So that's a bit of a long-winded explanation of how you apply policy, but hopefully that's helpful.
Councillor Rubini.
Yes, thank you for letting me come back again. Yes, this is confusing, isn't it? From what I've seen of the patio area, then the lighting used there is very low wattage. However, modern lights are designed with low wattage and they still emit a lot of lux, which is how they measure the lighting. But of course, we don't know the value of the lighting correctly because we're not allowed to discuss it. So my problem now is, have we got a dark pool around the patio with lots of bright lights in the other area? I've got no idea and I'm not allowed to know. So my problem is that, do we put a condition, as I've suggested, on the lighting as in front of us, not knowing if that's the brightest or the weakest of them all. So it's not clear to me. I think at the end of the day, I would like to see a condition put on that lighting can only go on during the hours of darkness and to stop at, as you suggested, perhaps 11 o'clock. Then at least the wildlife and all the rest gets the rest of the night without the dark skies policy. But it is confusing without knowing the brightness of the surrounding lights. That's what worries me.
Thank you, Councillor Rubini. Well, I was going to say that I believe that you have proposed an additional condition that there should be hours of operation of the lights on the decking, and perhaps that should be, they should be off at 11 p.m. and cannot be on again till 6 a.m. so that they are off overnight. And I believe that that original proposal was seconded by Councillor Keane. So I would like to test whether the committee is in favour of that, please. Please, all those in favour of that additional condition for the lighting on the decking, please show. So who's counting that? That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And those against, please. 3. So that additional condition is carried. Are there any other speakers? Councillor Austin, would you like to sum up?
Thank you. Thank you to all of the committee for spending the time actually to understand the issue here, because it's not straightforward. And certainly it's been an education for me to learn what reinforced to me in my mind how important this dark skies policy is, but secondly, how actually it's not really enforceable in our planning system. And that's really frustrating. I think this is almost a test case in terms of enforcement. I would recommend and agree with a condition personally, but I think that 11 p.m. is too late. I mean, I struggle to be awake past 9:30, so I wouldn't see the benefit of it. So I would suggest 9 p.m. if you were going to do a time condition, and I would also suggest that they are off when no one is in the building, no one's residing. I would also just recommend potentially that you actually, first of all, consider deferring or rejecting this, or deferring it pending a site visit, possibly an evening site visit. And finally, I don't think we've really talked about biodiversity enough in this. We've talked about the checklist, but every time these lights are on, we're impacting owls, we're impacting nocturnal creatures. I just think with the case like this, it is almost a test case. And what do we have control over? We have control over saying whether we agree with this decking and its associated lighting. If we don't agree with the concept of the whole scheme, which we have no control over, we do have control over saying, well, no, let's restrict this. That's what I would say. So I would be grateful if you would give thought to deferring, rejecting, or putting some fairly strict conditions on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, thank you for all of your thoughts. However, we have a recommendation that this be granted, and we have set an additional condition on the timing of the use of the lights from 11 p.m. They must be off. So with that additional condition, we have the recommendation. Would those in favour of the recommendation please vote now? Do we vote by hands because we don't have Kim?
Yeah.
So we have to vote by hand, by raising your hands, please. Those in favour with the additional recommendation, please show. And those against? And any abstentions? None. That is carried. Thank you very much. And we move on now to.
Could you just read out the results for us, please?
I beg your pardon. Was 7-3.
So the voting was 7 in favour of the recommendation, 3 against the recommendation.
Thank you.
And now our next recommendation is WA, thank you, Dana. WA 2024-00143, land at Deer Park House Hill, Close, Wonersh in Guildford. And that is over to you, Alistair.
Good evening, councillors and members of the public. I'm presenting on this application, as you know. So I'll just speak first of all to the PowerPoint, and also just to let you know there's been an update report which has corrected Section 8 of the report, which said that the site is outside the settlement boundary. It is in fact inside the settlement boundary, albeit washed over by the Greenbelt. And there are also some corrections in regards to policies. So some local plan 2002 policies were included in the report erroneously, and that has been updated to reflect the current replacement policies, which are in local plan part 2 policies as listed there. So starting with an aerial view of the site, so this is the south western part of Wonersh, the area within the settlement boundary. The site is indicated with the grey arrow, and the Deer Park House itself is just above that and to the left. So it's a large site as shown in the location plan. So the site forms the western part of Deer Park House, or the grounds of Deer Park House. The proposal would utilise the existing access as shown there and then form a spur road off that. I've included here on the left local plan part 2 map 20, which shows the whole of Wonersh, the settlement boundary for the whole of Wonersh, and then on the right just an extract of the southwestern part, again indicating the application site with an arrow. Sorry, I just jumped there. So this is the site layout plan showing really the houses as proposed, siting of the houses, and the number of trees to be retained around the perimeter of the site. This zooms in on that and shows plot 1, the northern one of the houses, plot 2 towards the south. So they are closest in terms of their relationships to High Oaks, which is to the west, and to Herons Bank, which is to the south. The minimum distance between plot 1 and High Oaks is 42 metres, a little more to Herons Brook, I should say, to the south. I've included the tree survey just because it gives a better indication of the retention of trees. There are some lower quality trees within the middle of the site that would be lost. The majority of this area is lawn or has been lawn, and the large trees will be retained around the perimeter. So this is plot 1, the northernmost of the two houses. They're both large single detached dwellings with accommodation in the roof space, around about 400 square metres. I think this one is actually 430, and then plot 2 is 399 square metres. So I've got some photographs here. This shows the boundary with High Oaks looking west, and then a view of the existing house, and then from in front, this second view taken from in front of the existing dwelling, looking south towards Herons Brook, and it's showing, really looking right across the part of the site that would be developed. Been extensive ecological surveys submitted with the application. They've been reviewed by our ecological consultant, Surrey Wildlife Trust, who've recommended conditions, and largely in regards to the implementation of an ecological management plan, woodland management plan, sensitive lighting, and conditions requiring protective measures around badgers, dormice, reptiles, and amphibians. There's been, oh sorry, I've gone on to the next one. Been objections from 44 individual households. So yeah, that's a point which is made in the report. Hence, it has had to come to planning committee to be determined. It's recommended for approval subject to conditions. And yeah, that's any other questions? Yeah, happy to answer.
Thank you, Alistair. We have speakers on this as well. We have Mr. Griffiths. You have 4 minutes from when you start speaking, Mr. Griffiths.
Yes, my name is John Griffiths and I live at the neighbouring property High Oaks that was mentioned. I'm speaking to object to this proposal, which is contrary to Greenbelt policy and should be refused. A proposal should be considered inappropriate if it does not satisfy any of the exceptions outlined in NPPF 154 and DM14 of the local plan. The case officer's report references 2 exceptions and only 2 exceptions. Firstly, 154E, limited infilling in villages. Limited infilling being defined in the local plan to be the development of a small gap in an otherwise continuous built-up frontage. However, as has been seen on the diagram, Plot 1 is a backland development with no frontage onto Hill Close. Furthermore, none of the 3 properties will be served by dedicated private access, and so can't be seen as a part of continuous built-up frontage. These shared drives are also inconsistent with the established pattern of development in Wantage Park. The case officer's other reference is to 154G, limited infilling or redevelopment, which would not have a greater impact on the openness of the greenbelt than the existing development. DM14D states this should be assessed taking into account the scale, mass, height and volume of the proposed development and the existing development on the site. In this case, 1 house becomes 3, with both new properties being larger in height, volume, number of floors and area of accommodation than Deer Park House. Clearly, this will have a significantly greater impact on openness than the current property. These points have been raised in the 44 objections and are also informed by planning and legal expertise, but have not been addressed in the case officer's report. Instead, the case officer cites unspecified limited infill development in the past. We have established that since the original 2 phases of Wantage Park development, there have been 4 additional properties built and none since 1998. All were single dwellings with their own private access and frontage to the road. The objections from 32 Wantage Park households emphasises the concern that this proposal would set a precedent for the building of additional houses in back gardens, thereby eroding the intrinsic character of Wantage Park and the area of greenbelt in which it lies. In summary, neither exception 154E or G holds, and therefore this proposal is inappropriate development in the greenbelt. On a separate point, contrary to the case officer's assertion, the proposal also does not comply with DM1 of the local plan, as the biodiversity net gain calculation has not been performed. This development is therefore non-compliant with DM1, DM14 and relevant parts of the NPPF, and it should be refused. Should you be minded to grant the application, we request the conditions are strengthened as follows. Firstly, the protection of remaining trees not already removed by the applicant, and they've removed a lot, is of particular importance to provide ongoing screening for neighbouring properties. Waverley's tree officer himself noted possible future pressure for tree removal in respect of plot 2. His no objection was subject to a series of conditions concerning retained trees. These conditions are absent from the case officer's report, but should explicitly form part of condition 8, together with the applicant's arboricultural method statement, which specifies a small number of further trees for removal. Secondly, a condition to remove permitted development rights for the new dwellings to avoid further uncontrolled damage to the greenbelt. And finally, a condition to remove the third floor dormer window from the plot 2 dwelling, which is sited on ground 5 metres higher than ours, to reduce overlooking and the significant impact on our privacy. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Griffiths. And our next speaker is Jessie Chapman. Mr. Chapman, you have 4 minutes from when you start.
Thank you, members of the committee, for giving me the opportunity to speak in favour of the proposal this evening. As you know, in assessing the proposal and in making their recommendation to approve the application, your officers have identified the submitted application as being fully compliant with the Council's relevant policy documents and the overarching planning advice within the National Planning Policy Framework. We note the reason for the application being brought to committee, but I would add that some individual households have submitted multiple comments and that many of the comments received are strikingly similar. Some also received from properties not within the proximity to the application site. Within the officer's report, whilst the officer's report is comprehensive and fully covers all relevant planning matters, I would like to reiterate the following points. The size of the proposed new homes are compliant with the development plan policies and the government space standards. Development is provided with a good degree of amenity space. Although washed over by Greenbelt, the site is located within the settlement boundary of Wonersh and very much forms part of the village. Officers have cited relevant local policies and national planning guidance within their comprehensive report on this matter to underpin the recommendation. The site is within a sustainable location, close to shops and services and public transport within the village. It is also important to remember that Wonersh forms part of the Council's spatial strategy in regard to appropriate and sustainable locations for new development. All relevant technical aspects of the development have been considered, including trees, ecology, highway matters, have been found to be fully compliant. The Council has confirmed that there would be no undue impact upon the amenity of neighbouring properties. The development can demonstrate a circa 37 and 41% reduction in carbon emissions over relevant building regulation target emission rates. Although a modest contribution to the development, the development will help the Council achieve a 5-year housing land supply. We believe the proposal to be of an excellent design, sympathetic and in keeping and complementary to the arts and style crafts of development within Wonersh Park. Although the proposed development constitutes infill development within the Greenbelt, in accordance with policy DM14 of the Local Plan Part 2, the test of which is to fill a space or gap between two other buildings or structures whether within a continuous built-up frontage or within built development. Also, and unlike some other locations in the borough, such as Rushmore and Wormley, for example, this site is within the settlement boundary. To this, I would add that policy SP2 of the local plan part 1 allows for development to take place in and around Wonersh, and Wonersh also forms part of Waverley's spatial strategy as cited within policy ALH1 of the local plan part 1. Thus, there can be no in-principle objection to the proposal. Just coming back on a couple of points that have been raised, single drive was added as part of the design to reduce the impact and the possible future, the possible loss of trees. It's true some trees did have to come down, but the site has been neglected for a long while, and many of those trees were dead and dying, so it was for safety reasons that they had to go. In terms of the biodiversity net gain, the application isn't subject to that because at the time when it was submitted, that hadn't come into effect. So it has to be remembered that while some may not like new development taking place and that there will be some change, this is not a reason to withhold planning permission. I reiterate that the application is being recommended for approval by your officers and it is fully compliant with the relevant policy set out within the development plan. I hope members of the committee have found this helpful and I thank you for your consideration of this matter. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chapman. Our next speaker is the parish councillor, Mr. Schutz. Councillor Schutz, I don't know if you're... Oh. Councillor Schutz, you also have 4 minutes from when you start speaking.
Chair, committee, thank you very much. My name is Anthony Schutz. I'm chair of Wonersh Parish Council. I have a disclosure to make. I live in Bracken Close. If you put the map up, you'll see Bracken Close is not far away. But my property does not share a boundary with the applicant and would not be overlooked. I'm here as chair of the Parish Council, which has already made its decision regarding this application. Parish Council strongly objects to this planning application. As you've heard, there's over 400 neighbour objections, and I note that some of these have been very well researched and have benefited from expert legal advice. The Parish Council objects to the proposed development and any development in this position, even if a new application for one house is made. The Parish Council objections can be summarised as follows. 1, the development of 2 new houses is overbearing and overlooking a number of Bracken Close and Hill Close houses, made worse by the fact the land is on a hill above Bracken Close. This is contrary to DM5 of the local plan, as it harms the amenity of existing occupants, especially in the winter. This development is high-density development and is both infill and backfill, and contrary to DM14 in our opinion. We understand this was also the preliminary view of the planning officer first assigned to this application. Something has obviously changed. The Plot 1 backfill property has no road frontage, and both the new properties will share a drive with the existing Deer Park house. This is inconsistent with the whole of Wonersh Park, whole of the rest of Wonersh Park. The proposed development is inappropriate development in the green belt and out of character with the surrounding area. Furthermore, it sets a precedent for infill development on all the large plots in Wonersh Park going forward. It's noted that this area is fully included in the Surrey Hills AONB National Landscape Planned Extension. The development of 2 luxury 5+ bedroom houses does not respond to the need for affordable housing and social housing in our community. In addition, the nearby St John's Seminary approved development of over 50 units more than meets any housing need for this localised area. Development in this position continues to encourage car dependency. It's a good 15 minutes walk from the village, I can assure you. The proposal will not deliver a biodiversity net gain, as you've heard, especially when the applicant has removed a significant number of trees. It was a beautiful woodland prior to this. It wasn't neglected, it was purposely left that way. The parish council rarely sees it necessary to attend a planning meeting like this and urges you to do the right thing and not approve this application. If approved, this is a mandate for developers to build on the larger plots in Wonersh Park and surrounds for purely financial gain to the disadvantage of the amenity to adjacent neighbours. Should the committee approve, I would also agree with what's been said. There should be much stronger conditions. The biodiversity net gains already been mentioned. As far as the trees are concerned, I see the Waverley Tree Officer has suggested they're all retained with TPOs. And we would suggest that the impacted neighbours are involved in any development of a woodland plan and also remove any further permitted development rights. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And our last speaker is the Ward Councillor, Councillor Michael Goodridge.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. As one of the ward councillors covering this application and as a Wonersh resident for over 36 years, living at the other end of the village, I want to speak to oppose this application. Hill Close is in Wonersh Park. Wonersh Park is unique in the village with distinct characteristics. It's got about 5 roads in it with some 100 houses. And you could see from the aerial photograph the amount of trees and vegetation, and it is unique with very low density in most of it. When the application was first submitted, it was looked at by our then very experienced planning officer, Tracy Farthing, whose initial thoughts, which he put in writing, were that the application was not policy compliant in terms of infilling in DM14. It was not limited infilling of small gaps within built development and there was not a built up continuous frontage. I was therefore somewhat surprised when I got a copy of the report before the committee today to see the U-turn in the officer's recommendations. I then assumed that the case officer, Tarjinder Rahel, wrote the report. He didn't. We've checked. And so I've asked over the last week, or we have asked over the last week, whose report it is, so that I could have a meaningful conversation with the officer who wrote the report. I have not been informed who it is, so have not been able to speak to the officer concerned, which I think is reprehensible, especially as I haven't been told. And I can only assume, therefore, that the officer who wrote the report is no longer with us, and I don't know whether he did a proper site visit or fully appreciated the uniqueness of Wonersh Park. There are things in the report that are inaccurate. They must be inaccurate. If you look at the bottom of page 20, paragraph 7, 33 letters have been received from 44 households. That is an interesting concept. I think it's the other way around. At least 44 objections from 33 households would make sense. It doesn't work the other way around unless you've got a lot of people living together. The officer says that there are a number of limited infill developments, and one of the first speaker has made that abundantly clear that that's not true. There have been extensions granted, and a lot of extensions take place on Wonersh Park, but there have been no new infill houses for 25 years. And since 1950, as has been made clear, only 4 new houses have been granted. The new houses are all off a driveway to Deer Park House and do not have their own frontage, totally different from the rest of Wonersh Park. You really need a site visit to fully appreciate the uniqueness of the character of Wonersh Park. And as has been mentioned, this Wonersh Park is about to be in the ANOB extension. And therefore, if you have any lingering doubts as to whether this should be granted, take that into account and vote against. I'm aware, as has been stated already, that a large number of mature trees have been removed before this application was submitted. I'm therefore not surprised when the arboricultural officer says that there are no mature trees that will be affected by this application. The application does nothing to provide affordable houses. These 5 and 6 bedroom houses will be worth well over £1 to £2 million, as are all the other houses in Wonersh Park. There is, in my view, a situation where the developer or the owner is trying to make a lot of money at the expense of the unique characteristics of Wonersh Park. In the end, I will also say on the left of Hill Close, when you go up it, there's a large mature hedge and frontage as you approach the site. And you can see that from the plans as well, that that's being retained. This is clearly plot 1. Can be no argument that this is backland development. There are no very special circumstances to grant this, and I would therefore ask you to refuse. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Goodridge. You made a few points that are not precisely to do with planning, so Claire is going to address those. Thank you.
Yes, members, just to confirm how planning agendas are put together. The agenda is actually signed, the front page is Susan Sale. Our internal checking procedure is that several senior officers review these reports prior to them being placed on the agenda. And ultimately, the final checking is through me before it goes on the agenda. And the same way with delegated reports, we have a senior officer checking system, with our senior officers having both significant experience as planners and also significant experience of dealing with Greenbelt matters. So members, I just wanted to make that point. I'm not sure how relevant it is to you to make your decision this evening, because clearly this report comes to you this evening with a recommendation from myself as head of planning, but just to give you comfort on that internal procedural matter so that you can make your decision this evening.
Thank you. So now we come to debate. Councillor Austin. You have 4 minutes.
Thank you. I just wanted to express my concern just about the information to councillors and to the parish council. I was asked by the parish council to understand why there had been a potential change of view by the planning officer, and I could not get hold of, well, to cut a long story short, we don't know who wrote this report, so both ward councillors have not been able to consult with the Waverley planning officer who wrote this during that period. We've written emails to request that a couple of times. So that leads me to have concerns about whether the person who wrote this report knows the unique character of Wonersh Park and the area, as that may impact on what's written in your report. And so it is relevant. So I just want to make that clear, really, that we haven't had an answer on that and we've not been able to speak to anyone this week. Thank you.
Thank you. Just to reiterate, members, we have heard Claire address that. Open to debate. Councillor Rubini.
Yes, thank you, Chair. A technical thing perhaps in here. Could you put up the slide for the proposed buildings? Yes, thank you. You say in the front bit under proposal that it's a 2.5 storey in scale and provide 1 5-bedroom and 1 6. Then on page 23, you talk about 2 buildings having 4 double bedrooms each, you don't actually describe the 5th and the 6th. I assume that those other bedrooms will be up in the top, but then I'm confused about a 2.5 story building. So is it going to be 1 bedroom in the roof? Is that the idea? It says first floor. Kitchen, study and utility with the bedrooms situated on the first floor.
Right, sorry. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
I think I've got this on. Yes, apologies, I didn't include the floor plans on this, the slides here, but I believe that is the case that those additional bedrooms are on the, within the roof space. In terms of being 2.5, described as 2.5 stories, then as you will have come across that sometimes there is how houses such as this are described, where they are designed to provide accommodation within the roof space. So, yeah, arguably the accommodation is over 3 levels, but the 3rd level is of a lesser floor area due to the shape of the roof space.
So is that 3rd floor for 1 bedroom?
I'm sorry, I haven't got that information in front of me.
I'm just trying to get that information up now. So if you go to the next question, then we'll come back and respond to that.
Are there any other speakers or questions? Councillor Coburn.
I don't have a question as such, other than a question for myself. Can I have the sort of site, location plan back? Because the next one, I think, just to get the clarity of what we're dealing with here, please. Is that the best one for that? Thank you.
We've got a number of plans there that all of which, so this is just the site itself, the red line area, without showing the buildings. Would you prefer to see one that's got the buildings included? Yeah, okay. And the tree survey actually shows it quite well, I think. But if that works okay for you? Yeah. Okay.
So if I can just confirm on the bedroom 5 is in the 2nd floor of this building. It's a single bedroom with a dressing room and an ensuite. Obviously the staircase comes up as well. So you come up the staircase, go into the bedroom and off the bedroom to either side. And that will be in the slope of the roof. So they've got what's called skeelings, so you won't have full head height. You've got a dressing room and an ensuite, which is a toilet, 2 basins and an on-shower. And there is a small built-in wardrobe within the skeeling, so the sloping bit of the roof.
Councillor Coburn.
Just another question, just to get this clear in my mind. Am I right in saying, looking at that slide, just with my eyes, that the original plot, the Deer Park House, is the same size as if not bigger than the one proposed for these 2 large houses? I mean, I can't get an idea of scale here. I just feel it's out of pattern, but I just want to be sure. It seems to me, looking at that one, that they seem very cramped on that land, maybe because of the restriction of the trees.
Yes, I think I think you're right. In fact, even on the location plan, it doesn't show the buildings. That sort of does show the relative area of the developed and undeveloped land, or the land that's allocated to plots 1 and 2. So there's quite an area of land retained there for Deer Park House, and some of this land is going to be, or in fact all the woodland would be covered by a woodland management plan. So that sort of area to the south of the driveway is not particularly attached to Deer Park House, but would certainly be covered by woodland management. The two plots still quite comparable in size to some of the larger plots within, sorry, that just meant to stay on that plan, within Wannish, and plot one, the one to the north is somewhat larger. Plot two, a bit smaller, but still comparable to other plots in Wannish Park, Wannish, I should say. You can sort of get a bit of an idea of that from this extract from the local plan map, particularly the one on the right. So it's, I think Deer Park House is the largest plot of any in that, as shown there. And so some of the houses just directly to the east along the drive are somewhat smaller than the houses on the western end, southwestern end of Wannish.
Any speakers? Councillor Morrison then.
Wannish Park is an absolutely gorgeous collection of properties. I mean, arts and craft. I think they're absolutely beautiful. Who would not want to live there? I actually went down to the site and had a look at it. Deer Park itself is a very imposing building. I personally would have been a lot happier if it was just one additional property being built. The second one going in there to me just is a little bit too tight. And for the overall development of Wannish Park, I think it's just out of character. And also I think the residents, when you pay substantial money to live in somewhere like Wannish Park, you're expecting privacy. You drive down the roads, they're tree lined, they're very substantial hedgerows. When you actually go down to Deer Park and look up towards the property, it's very exposed. It's just not in keeping with the rest of the estate. So I'm leaning more to sort of against this. If it's had been one property going on there, I would have been more likely to have gone along with it. Yeah, so I don't think I can actually support this.
Thank you. Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Chair. Many comments have been made about the scale, the size, the bulk, and the infilling. Certainly looking at plot one, it would seem to be roughly similar to the other plots within the park. Plot two is a little bit trickier, and I know that somebody spoke earlier about having a stronger condition on the trees, because you would expect, looking at the plot two and how close the house building is to the trees, that some removal of trees would be very tempting. So could the case officer just go through what the condition is on the remaining trees?
Members, whilst there is a condition on the proposed conditions attached on the agenda, having just checked the condition proposed by the tree officer, which the way it's worded isn't an enforceable condition, I do think that condition 5 could be further enhanced to ensure that it protected the existing trees or specific identified trees on the site. So members were minded to approve this application, then I would suggest they delegate authority to me to actually further enhance that condition to reflect the retention of existing trees on the site.
Do members agree that condition, that further enhancement
Agreed.
Agreed. Are there any other comments? Councillor Rubini.
Yes, thank you for letting me come back. I think I agree with Councillor Morrison. I know that estate, I've been on there many times, and they are big detached houses with their own driveway. I looked at that plan and one house would fit in there reasonably well. But to try and put a second one in there, I think is out of context with the rest of the estate. That's my view.
Thank you. So I see no other speakers. Councillor Goodridge, would you like to sum up?
Just very briefly, Madam Chairman, I'm delighted that some of the committee have been to look at the site to see its unique characters. It's a matter of a subjective opinion as to whether very special circumstances, bearing in mind this is in the Green Belt and about to be in ANOB, the burden is on the applicant to prove the very special circumstances concerning infilling. I don't think that burden has been met for the various reasons already outlined, and I would therefore urge you to refuse the application. The application's for 2 houses, and I would be opposing that. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, we have a recommendation on your agenda that this application be granted, and we have spoken about additional protection for trees. So would all those who are in favour of the granting of this application please show? And those against?
So just to confirm the voting, Kimberly, so 1 in favour of the recommendation, 10 objections to the recommendation, so that recommendation falls.
We need a proposal for the grounds for objecting, please.
Yeah, my objection will be overdevelopment. I think it's quite simple. That's what I would put. That with 2 houses on there, I think it's making too much of an estate. So it's out of character as well as overdevelopment.
Okay, so I think you're suggesting then that the erection of 2 dwellings on the site would result in a form of development that would be out of keeping with the character of the area, contrary to, and we're just going to rehearse the policies, but contrary to adopted policies.
Madam Chair, while the officers are doing that, could we have a seconder?
Is there a seconder? Several. Thank you.
So members were just suggesting that we contrary to local plan policy RE2 and DM14.
All those in favour of objecting on those grounds, please show. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you for that.
So
That
Kim,
is
Kim, just confirming it's 10 in favour of refusal, 1 against.
the objection is carried. So we move on now. Thank you, Dana. To WA 2024-00582, land at Aprilwood, Scotland Lane, Hazelmere.
Good evening again. Thank you, Madam Chair. This application is for erection of extensions and alterations to roof space to provide habitable accommodation and associated landscaping following demolition of existing extension and attached garage at April Wood, Scotland Lane, Hazelmere. The first slide shows the actual site outlined in red with the house dwelling in the middle, April Wood, and the garage to be demolished. And on the right-hand side, there's an aerial view and the site is outlined in blue. The site is located just within the settlement of boundary of Hazelmere to the south, with the little crosses. And the next slide shows the existing and proposed block plans. So the existing dwelling at April Wood with its garage and the dwelling following the demolition of the garage with the extensions. The next slide is a close-up of the actual extensions. So in yellow, it's the footprint of the existing dwelling, and in blue, it's the extent of the extensions at the ground floor level. The rear extension in the middle here would be demolished. These are the existing ground and first floor plans. And these are the proposed ground and first floor plans. Again, the extent of the new development is shown in blue. And this is the alterations to the roof space to provide an additional bedroom served by a rear dormer window. These are the existing elevations at April Wood and the proposed elevations. The majority of the work, it's not seen from the street scene, except for a very small part of the extension. It's all taking place toward the rear. The next slide shows the relationship with the neighboring property. So the property affected by this extension is High Pines, located to the north. There's a 45-degree sightline test taken from the nearest rear-facing window. As you can see, it does not breach the proposal at all. Also, it is about 23 meters long, and according to the guidelines, if a proposal meets the 45-degree sightline test within 12 meters, then is likely to result in harm. So not only doesn't meet it at all, but it's obviously double the distance where it would make a difference. The depth of the remaining rear garden will be approximately 13.5 meters, which is in excess of the minimum recommended of 10 meters. The following slides show the boundary between April Wood and High Pines, a long view of it. So as you can see, the various trees and shrubs. And also these are the close-up of the boundary, and this is the view directly from the rear of April Wood towards the rear amenity area at High Pines. The main factors for consideration are the scale and design and impact on visual amenity, street scene and character of the area, the impact on residential amenity, parking and highway safety, trees and landscape and ecology, and the recommendation is for approval subject to conditions. The application has come before you to committee tonight due to the number of objections, namely 11 letters from 9 different households. Some of the issues in the letters of objection, including overdevelopment, increasing density, access and parking, increasing traffic, etc., are raised in objections. These issues are referred to the 2 dwellings either side of the proposal, which has been approved at the July committee. Therefore, those issues have not been addressed in this report, and only issues relating solely to the household application for part of the considerations. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. There are no speakers, so the floor is open to you.
Thank you, Chair. Matters for consideration. The impact on the street scene is one of them. Does the case officer have a diagram or photograph that can illustrate what the impact of the street scene may be?
Thank you. I don't have a street scene photograph or sorry, drawing in this presentation. There will be no impact on the street scene because the majority, well, all the work actually, not the majority, is carried at the rear. Let me show you the proposed floor plans. So all the works is at the rear. So the only part of the proposal seen from the street scene would be this little bit of the projection of the extension to the side. So as I showed in this slide, it's literally, this is the little bit you'll be able to see out of the whole of the proposal. It's all to the rear. There's absolutely no works taking part at the front of the house at all. Thank you.
I don't see any other hands. Councillor Keane.
Yes, as a town councillor as well, I would just like to draw members' attention to the fact that Haslemere Town Council were concerned about this application with the street scene, but there doesn't seem to be anybody else that wishes to speak on it, but I would just lighten you to that.
Thank you. So I don't see any other hands, so shall we move straight to the recommendation? And the recommendation is to grant this application. Would all those in favour of granting this application please show?
Okay, Kim, just to confirm that was unanimous.
Thank you. Now we come to our next set of applications, which are those not subject to public speaking. And the next one is WA 2022-03085, land at Farnham House Hotel, Alton Road, Farnham. Back to Alistair. Councillor Beeman.
Yes, I was shown that this was was lodged in Castle Ward. I believe this is now in Far North West Ward. So therefore, I think I'll have to retire to the back. Thank you.
Okay. So we have another little pause while we wait for the planning officer. Councillor Coburn, please do.
I just wondered why that last one came into committee. Have I missed a sentence or two?
Yes, due to the number of objections, it passed the threshold. There were 11 letters of objection and the threshold is 10 for householder applications.
But I thought then that the officer would come and speak. I mean, if I've got something in the Bourne that, is, I thought we still had the, what's the word I'm looking for, the option of bringing it in or not. It automatically comes in, doesn't it, if it's got that number of objections?
Yeah, under the scheme of delegation, you are giving me delegated powers to deal with householder extensions where there are less than 10 letters of objection, if we're minded to approve. But once there's 10 plus, it has to come to committee for you to make a decision.
Good heavens, is all I shall say.
Okay, apologies for that. I had just something I needed rather urgently to check. This is Farnham House Hotel, Alton Road, Farnham, that I'm presenting on now. It's located about a kilometre straight line distance from the Farnham boundary, town centre boundary, town boundary, I should say. Sorry, I'm just trying to get my screen to move. So in the serial photograph, we just see a short section in the bottom right-hand corner of Alton Road. The green arrow indicates the site access, and the larger grey arrow indicates the principal building within the site. So moving to the location plan, we see the area of interest is within the red line. The proposal is for the conversion of the hotel to residential dwellings. The existing main hotel building would actually be subdivided into 2 plots. It consists of a late 19th century arts and crafts building, originally a dwelling, which has been extensively extended. And the proposal is to actually demolish part of the link between them to create 2 detached houses. And then a third house would be formed by an existing bungalow, which is staff accommodation at present. In form, just to show you the floor plan of the existing hotel, the bottom small element is the basement. And then this shows the way in which the 2 main plots would be set out. So moving to the elevations, the bottom elevation is of the south-facing elevation. So that shows most of the arts and crafts features. And then we've got an east elevation showing how it's been extended to the rear. And this is the same east elevation as proposed. Plot B on the left would be the original arts and crafts dwelling. Plot B, A on the right, is formed from part of the extension. And then we have the bungalow to the rear. Key issues as to, well, first of all, the loss of the hotel use. As detailed in the report, there's a viability study done on the use of the hotel, and it concluded that it would be very significant additional investment required to bring it up to a standard where it would be on par with competitors at the moment. But the sort of area, the specialty area, particularly of catering for weddings, there's a lot of competition in that area, and so the conclusion of the report was that it was not a viable option to convert or to upgrade the hotel, and there's officers have seen no reason to disagree with that. Policies in regards to loss of employment accommodation, employment premises do allow for that where there is a particular need for housing, which is certainly the case at present, as members will be aware. Just moving to some photographs of the surroundings. So this is a view north along the access lane up to the existing dwelling, or the existing buildings, complex of buildings. This is a front elevation view of the building. So most of that is what you're looking at there, apart from the conservatory to the left, is the original arts and crafts dwelling. And then 2 side views, the front part, the view on the left being largely to the original dwelling, the side of the original dwelling, and then on the right, part of the extension. This is a view of the western side of the extension, again, would form part of plot A. And then we have a couple of views of the bungalow. Overall, it's been assessed by a conservation officer who was in agreement that the improvements, that the separation of the existing dwelling, or the original dwelling, I should say, from the extension was a gain in heritage terms. It's not a listed building, but we do regard it as a non-designated heritage asset. Some changes were made as a result of conservation officer input, which included hipping the roofs between the 2 new dwellings. Sorry, I've just moved my slide. And linking the 2 with this wall, so that would help in masking residential paraphernalia and views from the lane. and it's recommended for approval.
Thank you, Alistair. I'm just
There is.
clarifying, on the agenda, it says quite clearly, applications not subject to public speaking. However, I believe we have a speaker in the gallery. Mr. Bandos, would you like to speak for 4 minutes? Thank you.
Good evening again, members. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak at this committee on behalf of my client, the owner of Farnham House Hotel. The application site is a hotel that sits within the generous grounds on the outskirts of Farnham. The hotel has been significantly extended to the rear of the property since it became a hotel. The front entrance to the building retains its pleasant arts and crafts architectural features. Internally, the original building also has a grand entrance and lobby area. The rear of the hotel building, with its large extensions, gives the building a more functional hotel appearance and probably doesn't add that much to its character and appearance. The proposal is to part demolish the more modern part of the hotel at the rear, the central space, to form 2 separate dwellings. There would not be any increase in floor area, but in fact there'll be a reduction in floor area. The existing staff accommodation building, sited in the northwestern corner of the site, is in effect a sort of chalet bungalow. It's actually laid out as a house with bedrooms, kitchen, living area. No change to the layout of the property is proposed. Part of the proposal, other than internal painting and decorating, and obviously a change of use to a self-contained dwelling house. Although within the wider Farnham area, the hotel is some 1 mile from the edge of Farnham town, accessed off the A31 Alton Road. The access turning, particularly when coming from Farnham and turning into the site, involves crossing the Alton Road dual carriageway, and due to its limited length of the slip road, can be quite a hazardous experience, particularly whenever I've tried to go to site. When leaving the site, the visibility displays are limited and the access point, again, is awkward. The situation is exacerbated, particularly as the site is a hotel and can have quite a lot of visitors arriving at the hotel at the same time, significant numbers, which can create a highway hazard. The proposed conversion of the hotel to 2 dwellings and a 3rd dwelling created out the staff accommodation will significantly reduce the amount of traffic coming to the site, both during the day and in the evenings. The hotel is operated as a hotel, also a conference centre in recent years. The conference centre side of the business, which supported the hotel, saw a significant downturn in recent years. The hotel venue then began to specialise as a wedding venue. However, the wedding market has faced stiff competition from bigger and better located venues, and would require quite a significant amount of investment to bring up to those sort of standards to enable it to compete. And the client just doesn't see a viable return from that, which has resulted in the business struggling as well. The hotel use has been impacted by recent new hotel provision within the town centres and modern facilities, and better access to the town centre facilities as a whole, particularly as hotel guests would have to drive into Farnham to use facilities. It is quite awkward, and they have found it difficult to actually fill room space during the week and also weekends. Whilst the proposal will result in 2 dwellings on the site, the original main property will revert back to its original use as a dwelling house. In terms of the design, the proposal will result in improved proportions and scale of the building, reducing the overall bulk and massing of the hotel building. As such, we feel that the proposal will enhance the heritage asset and hope that you will support the proposal. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. Councillor Beaman, did you want to say anything?
I have no comments to say either way, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. The floor is open. Councillor Rubini and Councillor Coburn.
Anyway, Chairman, very simple question. Under number 6, consultations and town council comments, I see Farnham Town Council object and Farnham Society object, but I'm used to seeing why Farnham Town Council would object. They normally say why, just on here, do we know why they object?
Why do you make sense? Why define?
Thank you. Okay, so a number of the Egyptians came in on this application when there was also an application in for 2 detached dwellings to the front of the site. They were a separate application and they refused under delegated powers in March of this year. There was a wish at that point to see the 2 dealt with together, but the call-in was specific to if an application was to be approved. So I think Farnham Town Council's objections were on the base of harm to the countryside and loss of the hotel use.
Thank you, Councillor Coburn.
I think it's absolutely wonderful. You know, I mean, I've been to that hotel. It's part of Farnham. I mean, it may be slightly outside, but it's part of Farnham. We've had a few knees ups there, and the service was always wonderful. I mean, I won't say, you know, it was a small, comfortable, cosy, you know, country house hotel, but it suffered, as the speaker said, and it's been rather sad to see it at times, you know, when you imagine what it was like in the past. And if you are going to convert a hotel, and you know, things change. We've got the Bishop's Tables has gone to residential, but then we've got other hotels, you know, bigger hotels on the outskirts, and also sort of coming into the town. So you know, things change, and yes, you can regret the loss of this, but I think the way it's being done is actually really good. You know, to split, because it is a bit of a mismatch at the moment, to say the least, you know, and I think it will result in 2 good buildings. And it's such a nice setting, you know. I'd be quite envious of the 3 people sort of living in those homes, because, you know, it is a very nice setting. You go slightly up to it. So, you know, given where we are with housing, given where we are with employment and hotels and everything else, I think this is an excellent reuse of the buildings, and you know, I really do support it wholeheartedly. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Coburn. Are there any? Oh, Councillor Clark, and then Councillor Keane.
Thank you, Chair. I too know this place very well. My son did his work experience here, and I was forced to have lunch at the hotel every single day for 3 weeks. But that was when it was a good business. They turned to weddings, but of course they're now surrounded by venues, specialist venues, which are much, much superior to what this place can offer. As King Charles said, the extension to the Arts and Crafts building is a bit of a carbuncle, and it's great to see the original building back to its being a one-off in terms of separating it from the extension. It is arts and crafts, but it's also quirky. There are a lot of quite individual features, especially within the hotel, which at the moment are obscured by trying to cram in 24 bedrooms. So it'd be good for this arts and crafts building to go back to its original use, which is a dwelling. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Keane.
Yes, thank you. Well, I mean, it's always sad to see a hotel that's sort of becoming almost dilapidated in a way, because if they can't get the desired amount of footage through, it's never going to work. And it's quite nice to see three dwellings made and to keep the arts and craft design. So I think it's a really good use of a site where a hotel is not functioning as it should.
Thank you. No other speakers? So I'll read the recommendation that delegated authority is granted to the Assistant Director of Planning to grant planning permission and make minor amendments to the wording of the conditions, subject to the applicant entering into an appropriate Section 106 planning obligation to secure the mitigation of impacts on the Thames Basin Heaths SPA and subject to conditions. All those in favour, please show.
Kim, that's unanimous.
Thank you very much. At 8:10, we close the meeting. No. Right.